What happened to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? People used to talk about it all day, every day, but now not so much. If you're an old school fan, this might not sound like a problem, but you have to remember that JoJo's is basically a global phenomenon. When any of the new parts got an anime, people ate it up. Everyone was obsessed with JoJo's. And the hype going into Stone Ocean was unreal. But then Netflix happened, and that unreal hype died overnight. And now? Now there's still no announcement for Part 7's anime, and I don't really see anyone talking about the JoJo Lands manga, at least not like JoJolion. So what happened? How did JoJo's go from a global phenomenon to almost complete radio silence? Well, to understand the state of things now, we have to go back to an era that totally hasn't been milked to death. The 80s. So in case you're unaware, JoJo's is actually Shueisha's longest ongoing manga series, currently sitting at 134 volumes. Part 1, Phantom Blood, started in Shonen Jump in January of 1987. Then, with basically no break, it continued right into Part 2, Battle Tendency, in November of the same year. Now, I couldn't find any sales for the manga back in the 80s, but it was pretty popular in Japan. Part 1 was met with some skepticism at first. It was running alongside titans like Dragon Ball and Fist of the North Star, so compared to Goku and Kenshiro, Jonathan doesn't seem like that great of a main character. In particular, some Japanese fans didn't like how Jonathan was always losing to Dio in the beginning. But as the story went on, people got into it. Then when Part 2 started, we got a much different kind of character with Joseph, who, instead of a classic hero, was a sly, deceitful main character that openly ran away from fights and didn't fight for virtues and right and wrong like Jonathan did. Plus, by this point, series creator Hirohiko Araki had expanded on the Hammond system to where it was much more creative and allowed for more intense fights than in Part 1. So by all accounts, Part 2 was clearly an improvement from Part 1. Not that Part 1 is bad. In fact, when you read Part 1, it's actually fairly good. But it obviously isn't quite as good as Part 2. So after the success of Part 2, which ended in March of '89, Araki would follow that up with Part 3, Stardust Crusaders, in the same month. And this is where JoJo's explodes in Japan. Araki would come out with another new kind of main character with the debut of Jotaro. This time, now a Clint Eastwood type character who's too cool for school and is basically the embodiment of these hands are rated E for everyone. In some ways, a new take on Jonathan and Joseph, such as his sense of justice, wanting to do the right thing, and having a keen sense for thinking on the spot. Jotaro also stood as a departure from the likes of Jonathan, as he was the punch first, ask questions later kind of guy. And of course, Araki would debut the iconic Stance power system, which to this day is still loved for its intricate rules, unique abilities, and quirky character expressions. In retrospect, Part 3's success can at least be attributed to Araki's decision to format the story in a global adventure, which he credits to his wanting to avoid the story dissolving into just another tournament arc. I'm sure we all have a series that was ruined by a basic tournament arc or two, so thank God Araki did what he did. And clearly fans agreed, because with Part 3, the JoJo's manga was the most popular it had ever been. Granted, Araki did have issues writing the story. There's characters that he didn't really properly plan for, like Whole Horse, and without getting into spoiler territory, there's at least a few times where it feels like Araki planned to go one way, and then went back on his original plans. Despite these issues, people still loved the characters, they loved the stands, and of course they loved the epic, long-anticipated battle between Jotaro and Dio. Again, I couldn't find any sales for Part 3 back in the 80s, but for a frame of reference, it was the first part to get an anime adaptation, showing that this was the most popular part at the time. But we'll get into the anime in just a second. Actually, before we do that, make sure to like the video if you're enjoying it so far. It's the easiest way to support the channel, and it helps spread the video to other viewers like you. So JoJo's would continue with Part 4 releasing in 1992, Part 5 releasing in 95, Stone Ocean releasing in 99, and Part 7 releasing in 2004 for the first 23 chapters before it would move from Weekly Shonen Jump to Shueisha's seinen magazine, Ultra Jump. Ever since then, Part 7 in each subsequent part has released on a monthly schedule. Now, while JoJo's was popular in Japan, it never really blew up in the West at the time. On top of existing difficulties with getting proper English translations, never mind official print volumes, there were a lot of hurdles when translating due to issues such as copyright concerns. In addition, JoJo's wouldn't get an anime until '93. Produced by Studio A3P, it adapted Stardust Crusaders in just 13 episodes, but was an original video animation, or OVA. A3P would then make a Phantom Blood movie in 2007, but that was only released in Japanese theaters. So while the series was popular with Jump readers in Japan, the series was considered a niche interest by Western audiences. At the time, it was already hard to get translations of series that weren't available in print volumes. There was no anime adaptation to reach new fans through broadcast TV. But this all changed in 2013 when David Productions came out with their anime. Starting with Phantom Blood, Dave Pro's anime was a proper adaptation that was broadcast on Japanese TV. By the time Stardust Crusaders was adapted in 2014, Crunchyroll finally got streaming rights for the series, and in 2015 began streaming new episodes. And this is when the series became a global phenomenon. Hardcore fans and casual audiences were both blown away by the insane story and characters, leading to some of the most iconic memes on the internet. To this day, JoJo's is one of the most referenced anime of all time, with people using all kinds of memes, imitating the weird stand battles, and copying the absurd character poses. And all for good reason. On top of giving JoJo's a faithful adaptation, the Dave Pro anime is arguably better than the source material in ways. Some people say it's easier to follow than Araki's black and white art. In addition, there are scenes that were either added or fleshed out that in a lot of ways make the anime a must-watch for anyone who considers themselves a serious JoJo's fan. Plus, you have all the other great qualities of any amazing anime, like the voice acting, the animation, the unique use of color, by the way, and the soundtrack and sound design that bring a sense of expression that the manga can only reach for. With all that, it's no wonder that JoJo's went from complete obscurity to mainstream success basically overnight. And this would continue all through the first 2 seasons, with each new part only reaching more and more new fans. I only got into JoJo's when part 5 was coming, and at the time, all I remember is people losing their minds whenever a new episode came out. And this was back in like 2019. The next part, Stone Ocean, wouldn't release on Netflix until 2021. So for like 2 years, you didn't have any new content if you were an anime-only fan, which is partly what contributed to the hype for part 8 of the manga, JoJolion. In the lead up to Stone Ocean's anime, a lot of people who loved the anime decided to finally check out the manga. So, following the end of Golden Wind, you had a bunch of people now catching up to JoJolion and reading new chapters. And in my experience, I can tell you that at the time, you would see tons of people talking about JoJolion on Twitter and other big sites every month. This went on until it ended in August of 2021, which brings us to the anime release of Stone Ocean. Now, keep this in mind. JoJo's was big in Japan for like 30 plus years at this point. It had been on a winning streak in the West for almost a decade. Everyone loved Golden Wind and couldn't wait for a new season. Plus, there were a lot of other factors, like the fact that this would be the first female of the JoJo's lineage, and her voice actor was a huge JoJo's fan and couldn't wait to play the part. So you have all that leading into what was probably the most hyped up of all the JoJo seasons. And then Netflix happened. See, when Stone Ocean first came out, people loved it. They loved the opening, the new characters, the fights, all the usual stuff. And part of that hype was that for the first time, JoJo's was being released globally to streaming first. Prior to this, you had to wait for new episodes every week alongside the TV schedule. So people loved that they could binge the episodes. But there was a catch. Netflix released the first 12 episodes in December of 2021 all at once. But then they came out and said the next batch of episodes wasn't coming out until September. So you had to wait almost a year after just 12 episodes. And then after they released episodes 13 through 24, they did this again. Granted, this time you only had to wait until December, so it was only a few months. But still, a lot of fans, most fans probably, wanted to binge the entire part in one sitting. But now they were forced to either binge, take a break, then binge and do it again, or wait a whole year for the complete season. Which was an ironic turn of events. Because before, you couldn't binge everything, but at least it was a regular release schedule. You knew you were getting episodes of the anime every week, so it was a regular thing. With Stone Ocean and Netflix, you could binge episodes, but then you would hit these gaps where you were forced to forget about it and then suddenly try and hype yourself up again when the next batch was released. So, with Stone Ocean, this was really the first time JoJo's hype hit a wall. Going into it, the hype was probably the biggest it had ever been. And you know, people liked the anime. Granted, Part 6 does have its issues, and it's not my favorite part, but the anime adaptation is still awesome and a lot of people enjoyed it. But two things kinda hurt it as a mainstream success. Of course, you had the fact that it was released in batches, so after the first 12 episodes, a lot of people kinda forgot about it. Plus, while Japanese fans could watch it on TV in addition to Netflix, everyone else could only watch it on Netflix. So if you were used to watching on Crunchyroll and didn't already have Netflix, you kinda had to decide whether you wanted to shell out for a Netflix subscription or turn to the high seas and look for the JoJo's One Piece. Even then, you were still subject to the TV release schedule. So that brings us to 2023. At this point, people like Stone Ocean, but anime hype definitely isn't what it used to be. In all fairness, people are familiar with Netflix jail by this point. It's really outside of Netflix's control thanks to the priority of the broadcast release. Still, the whole Netflix jail thing kinda sucked the fun out of Part 6. So when it ends, people aren't as crazy about it like when Part 5 ended. Plus, when Part 5 ended, JoJolion had been going on for a while and was just reaching its end. When Stone Ocean ends in 2022 and we enter 2023, the final part of the manga, JoJo Lands, wouldn't start until February. So whereas before there was this incentive to catch up to the manga before it ended, anime fans going into 2023 didn't have that same incentive. There was no one hyping up Part 9 and telling anime-onlys they had to read it because it just wasn't out yet. And that brings us to the present in 2024. So we're approaching almost 2 years since Stone Ocean ended, and there's still no sign of when Dave Pro or Netflix will announce the adaptation of Steel Ball Run, arguably the best part of the manga. Part 9 has been releasing monthly for a year and a half now, and while there was some hype going into it, I personally have not seen anyone talking about it. Now granted, I haven't even started JoJolion yet, but back then you saw people talking about it everywhere. JoJo Lands, not so much. Obviously, people are reading it, but it's only got 3 volumes out and it's just not that popular yet. And that's kind of the state of things for JoJo's. Because of the issue with Netflix and the existing issues in the source material, Stone Ocean wasn't a massive hit like the earlier seasons, and we haven't heard anything about the next season in almost 2 years. And whereas JoJo's used to have tons of discussions following new chapters, now it's kinda just in the background. Now, please don't be mistaken. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure isn't going anywhere. It's still the longest ongoing series from Shueisha. It's still one of the most popular series of all time. Stone Ocean may be so-so, but Steel Ball Run is so much better, and it's one of, if not the best part in JoJo's. So not only is it only a matter of time before they announce the next season, but I think when they do adapt Part 7, it's going to be way more popular than Part 6. Now, with regard to the manga, it's really not that surprising. Again, there's only 3 volumes. I mean, the anime was bound to catch up to the manga eventually. Plus, JoJo's fans are just chillin'. They're enjoying Part 9 and they know the series isn't going anywhere, especially considering where the series started. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure might be a global phenomenon now, but it wasn't that long ago that you had to turn to the dark pages of the internet just to get a half-decent English translation. So sure, hype for JoJo's might not be the best right now, but it's still one of the all-time greatest series. And that's it. So now I'd like to hear what you think. What did you think of Stone Ocean? What are your predictions for the future of JoJo's? Share your thoughts and see what everyone else has to say down in the comments. I'll pick my favorite and share it as comment of the week on my community tab. And if you'd like another discussion like this one, then make sure to check out my video on One Piece. In that video, I explain why the early parts of One Piece are way better than everyone thinks. You can find that video in the playlist linked right here. Until then, thank you for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.